Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, Gavan, and for many of you who speak Elvish. I am really excited to do this video. I've wanted to do this video for a while now. It's about Doreen Virtue's change in 2017. She decided to become a born-again Christian, but she was somebody that I have really attributed to my kind of self-awakening in the past. And many of us that, have gone through our spiritual awakenings and have kind of looked into a possibility of being an incarnated angel and a type of starseed or an elemental soul. These are the archetypes that Doreen Virtue put forward into the world in terms of creating an incarnated angel quiz. And we will go over it on my channel today. But I wanted to not so much focus on Doreen and her life choices of kind of renouncing all of her angel work and all of her kind of new age spirituality. And I don't want to say anything about really her new choices, because that is her personal life path, and that is fine as long as she's happy. That's really what more I am concerned about people, is just, are they happy? Are they truly happy? Are they authentically living in their joy, or are they, hiding because of self-doubt or fear? That's more my concern. And with Doreen, she has her own YouTube videos, so you can go on and check her out and learn about her story. But we can look at her website together and you will immediately see a difference. If those of you who have also grown up with Doreen Virtue's books, her angel cards, and if you have taken the Incarnated Angel quiz and learned, that you are a star person and starseed and all these types of archetypes that we have come to know within the collective, then you can take a look on the website now with me and see that there has been a huge difference and a big change. So we're going to look at it really quickly, and then I will go into more of her Incarnated Angel quiz, and we can look at that because I'm interested more in discussing the archetypes that she was able to kind of tap into. And I will explain more when we get into the subject of quantum physics and entanglement, which I have prepared for today. So let me share the screen here and let's get going. So this is Doreen's website. And let me give you a bigger screen. How about that? So this is her website here. And you can see that she says, why I left the New Age to follow Jesus, 10 reasons why Christianity and New Age cannot blend. I may do a video because I personally am very interested in bringing the New Age ideas and also religion together. Because here's why. The New Age is actually making more sense of what the quantum world is about and what physicists and scientists have discovered about what makes up our reality. And so that's what the New Age is about, is making sense of it spiritually, what science has discovered. So I will talk about that in another video in a more detailed way. Maybe I can go through this with you all, and it would be interesting. But you could see here she has 20 New Age practices that are infiltrating the church, an A to Z list of New Age practices to avoid and why. Many of this is about what she used to do as far as believing in elementals and believing in angels and all of that. So many people were very upset because of this, and I'll stop sharing the screen here. Many people were really upset because of her renouncing all of her previous work. And for me, I kind of understand what happened and, where she had to go. And we'll get more into it when we go through the Incarnated Angel quiz, and I can talk about that with you. But there are some very real truths that she was able to tap into. And the reason is because everything is connected energetically. This actually has been proven by scientists and physicists in the idea of quantum entanglement, and I will go through that in a bit here. But let's go to her angel quiz, which is on my blog that you can follow at High Elven Wisdom and Love on WordPress. If you're interested in my side conversation off of my normal topics on my video, but sometimes I just like to share my, everything that I basically think of, and movie reviews, and just my thoughts coming from somebody who resonates with the elves and coming from the perspective of the elves of Tolkien and holding that kind of consciousness. I give my thoughts and my movie reviews and just daily observations. So you can follow me here at my WordPress. But I included her Incarnated Angel quiz for many of you to look at. And this is the very first part of it, is about if you're an elf or a fairy. This is what she said. You're probably an incarnated elemental if you care deeply about the environment, would prefer the company of animals instead of humans, get extremely angry at people who are abusive to animals or the environment. I would say all of this is correct here, and have a history of excessive partying or addictions. Now that's kind of interesting, and that would probably be something that maybe not all elemental souls would struggle through, but I can see that this probably means that it's more about the escapism, because if your consciousness comes from a very peaceful, harmonious land of fairyland, and you carry that consciousness block within you, then you're going to want to escape from some of your problems on Earth. And Earth is just not fairyland, but it can be when we bring and harness those energies of fairy and bring them to the world for others to see. And that's part of the goal of incarnated elemental souls. They're known to have a great sense of humor and are talented at storytelling. I would say so. I mean, Tolkien was an elemental soul himself, and he even said that he was very much like a hobbit. So he considered himself a fae soul, and in a way. And so, he had also a good sense of humor, but was really good at storytelling. And we can see that in a lot of fairy souls. Usually they're born entertainers. They could be actors or actresses, or they could be, playwrights and musicians. They like to entertain. They like to enchant. All of the stories in the folklore about elves and fairies are that they dance and they love to enchant others with their art that they express. Never met a rule that you couldn't break. So she's saying that they're rebellious in some kind of nature, that they don't really like to follow the rules of society. And this makes sense, because if the rules are created by humans, then elves and fairies that would be a little separate from humans would not necessarily follow those rules. But we learn when you go into the fairy world, in terms of research and looking at the past ideas of elves and fairies, they very much made their own rules, and there are very specific laws and rules of fairyland that they follow. And there's some correlation between human rules and the fairy rules, but there is maybe that thought within an elemental soul when they're on Earth that, hey, I shouldn't have to follow these human rules. These are lame, or they're just not really important. And so there's this kind of rebellious nature within an elemental. And maybe that's true for some, but maybe not for all. Love practical jokes and rarely feel guilty. This is interesting, the rarely feel guilty. So that's also part of the idea of being connected to the fairy world and realm, rather than being connected to the human government and set of rules and laws. So there is that idea of that detachment from humanity in a very real way that makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Love practical jokes, like as little tricksters and mischievous elves and fairies that have been written about in so many tales. I mean, you knew them as a child, And we kind of think that way, that, elves and those like to play tricks on others. And this might not be always the case, but what she was tapping into was the archetype of the elemental soul that we can gather through evidence and observation of how elves and fairies act within our stories and within our personal experiences and within our own intuitive, grasp on who we are as people. And so you could read my little words there, but this is the quiz that I wanted to talk about here. So she says, the following is a quiz from Doreen Virtue's book, Earth Angels. For each statement, decide if it's true or false. So you could do this on your own time, and I'm just going to read through this. And you may notice something. You might fall into many other categories than just one. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to make a full decision about what category or what soul type you have. Many of us are hybrids. So number one, I tend to easily put on or lose extra weight, or I'm currently over or underweight. That's kind of an interesting one. That's more about, I guess, extremes. Being somebody that puts on a lot of weight, or being someone that can't put on a lot of weight. And so it's one extreme to the other there. My past or current love partners are addicts or alcoholics. I rarely break a rule. I have a hard time saying no. I highlight, color, or bleach my hair. I would prefer to help someone one-on-one rather than a group setting. Truth to be told, I like animals or plants much better than I like people. Or I have Celtic origins, or I look Celtic, that is, I have reddish hair or a ruddy complexion. I think that this right here, that is a very superficial idea of elemental souls. Now, this quiz is actually to determine whether you're a star person, a walk-in, an elemental soul, or an incarnate angel. And you're going to see that they kind of all blend together. And this is very superficial in the idea of what elves are, or what elementals are, because as we know, they come in many different forms and many different looks and appearances. But she kind of focused on the typical Irish fairy, and she went right for the red hair, whereas also Irish people have dark hair as well, and blonde too. So it's interesting that she focused really on that. I constantly play practical jokes. I'm quite the mischief maker and seem to have a persistent twinkle in my eyes. I'm fiercely independent and don't like following rules or authority. My finances seem to be either feast or famine. I don't like being the center of attention, and I'm usually a wallflower at social functions. I've always believed in or been interested in ETs or UFOs. So you could start to see the categories. Here is the earth angels, and here is the elementals, and here is the star person. I'm compulsively thoughtful towards people, whether they express appreciation or not. I conduct Reiki or other forms of energy or hands-on healing. My life's mission is more important than getting married and having children. I really would like to go home now because I know that Earth isn't my home. And it's interesting, as we think about these ideas, they could also be part of the elemental as well, because easily the idea I conduct Reiki or other forms of energy or hands-on healing, she says that's a star person, but in the Elven realms of Tolkien and many of the stories we know about elves, they also performed Reiki and healing with their hands, and they have that ability as well. So these start to blend together, and you start to understand that. I really would like to go home now because I know that Earth isn't my home. That also could be for the elemental soul too, because fairyland, or a planet that's very close to fairyland, would probably be something that an elemental soul would miss, because although there are beautiful parts of nature within our planet, there are less, how can you say it, maybe untainted or untouched parts of nature, because the human population is so large. And so there might be this kind of feeling of escape for the elemental soul to constantly be in nature all the time, away from society. And so you could also feel sometimes that Earth isn't your home, because Earth has so much, so many people in society, that it's hard to sometimes, just live out in nature all the time. And also Earth obligations maybe sometimes take over as well. And then here is the other type of person, who is the wise one. I had a life-changing experience, such as a serious accident or near-death experience. Well, you know that about me. In the past, I was so miserable that I wanted to die and seriously considered or attempted suicide. Yes, I have changed my first name, or I am strongly considering do so. And a lot of elemental souls that are Elven souls, they're kind of choosing Elven names. They're feeling drawn to doing that because it just kind of adds to the self-expression. My family and friends remark, "You're different now. There's something about you that's not the same." I have made or am making a drastic changes to many areas of my life simultaneously, such as moving, changing jobs, divorcing all at once. I have a deep spiritual knowledge that didn't come from any books or teachers. And there are really interesting things here in the idea of just the idea of being in touch with the intuition, and how this actually, I'm so sorry, this category is the walk-in. This is the walk-in, because it's about having a huge change in your life, and your soul in your previous state was so tired. It's a little bit of the idea of like the Elven idea of spirit in Tolkien's world, where the soul can be so tired from the body that it removes itself and moves on. And that's when an elf can actually die, but it doesn't actually die because it's immortal. The spirit that's within is immortal and goes on. But this is the idea that you as a walk-in might have another type of soul that comes into your body in place and walks in and takes over. And so you feel like you almost have had two different lives. So that's the walk-in. And then this is the wise one. Even though I know I'm different from other people, I still enjoy the company of others, get along pretty well with most people. I know that I have magical abilities which are untapped right now. I have strong past life memories or an interest concerning Arthurian or Atlantean times. I believe that I was burned at the stake or killed in some other way during the witch hunts or inquisitions. And I have studied tarot cards or astrology. I'm very drawn towards earth-based spirituality, such as shamanism or full moon ceremonies. So then this is the wise ones, the ones that are connected to maybe the paths of Wicca or paganism. They might have been witches in the past, wizards. So this is her kind of categorizing the different souls. And then you're supposed to add them up and see what you get. So you can definitely do that on your own time. And I just included here more about the idea of these special forms of light workers. Doreen describes earth angels as those light workers who have come to the planet to help it and all its inhabitants to evolve. Earth angels come in a variety of forms, such as incarnated elementals or wise ones, which is what we went through. But how do you know if you're an earth angel? Some of the characteristics are listed below. Feeling different, separate, or disconnected from others, sensitivity to people, chemicals, or violence, a strong sense of purpose, problems with manifesting abundance or relationships. This is kind of interesting, the idea of just being very sensitive, that earth angels, if they came with that sense of helping as a mission in their life, not to have a normal human life where, you have a family and you don't think about these things, and then you just have a regular human life, but you're not thinking about the assistance to the consciousness of humanity, then if you are somebody who does think about the assistance to the consciousness of humanity, then you would be somebody that would have those empathic abilities already, and would be somebody that would be very sensitive to many things, such as hearing about violence or sensing it, the chemicals around, smells, sights, tastes, all of that. All of your senses can be very overwhelmed. You can have a strong sense of purpose with you. You can have problems with manifesting abundance or relationships. That could be interesting because that might be more about being kind of attached to other people's purposes because you're trying to help them. So you sometimes might not manifest your own abundance because you're helping others. And so that's kind of a life goal for those who are incarnated angels in that way. They need to balance helping others as well as themselves on earth, because if you don't help yourself, you cannot really help others. And it's important to remember that, to keep that balance going. Looking younger than your chronological years, a ringing sound in one ear, which is a high-level communication that's unintelligible, just hearing basically these different frequencies because you're hypersensitivity, and strangers telling you their problems, feeling like they can just open up to you. So she wrote that these are the general ideas if you are an earth angel. And then she breaks it more down here into a very physical and, a little bit more detailed list. Incarnated angels have a sweet heart-shaped face, or say I'm sorry a lot, look like an angel, whether male or female, have overeating or weight issues, gravitate to the helping fields of nursing, teaching, counseling, or healing, lighten or highlight your hair. That's interesting to say that all angels are blonde, but are very trusting of people, feel guilty saying no to others, seem to glow with a large aura, fall in love with someone's potential and try to coach them to greatness. Tend to have codependent relationships with addicts and alcoholics because you're always trying to help people. Stay in relationships much longer than a normal person might. Love following rules and don't like them broken. Are really good at giving but not at receiving. So if someone is an earth angel and an elemental soul, they might be more of a high elf that would not really break the rules and that would like to follow a sense of divine order rather than be the more mischievous types that are more rebellious. So you can kind of combine, once you understand how the soul types work, then you can understand your special hybrid. The incarnated elemental likes to play practical jokes, prone to addictions, might have reddish hair, Celtic appearance, love to party, are fiery and passionate, prefer the company of plants and animals to people, can't stand rules or people who abide by them, are reluctantly healers or helpers. That's interesting. I don't know if you would say that all elementals would be reluctant healers or helpers. I think many of the fairies, especially the sea leaf fairies, the ones that wanted to help humans, part of the light elf court in a way, they would be more wanting to heal and help. Can easily manifest abundance or the complete opposite. Prefer play over hard work. Can't stand being indoors very long. Prefer not to have clothes on. Prefer outdoor jobs such as leading nature hikes, forest rangers, gardening, dog walking. Love working with gems, crystals, and other stones. And you have a high degree of creativity. Do well in dance, theater, comedy, poetry, publishing, motivational speaking, and performance arts. Love to laugh, play, and be silly. I mean, you could basically fit this entire category into the way that elves do behave, but there are some exceptions with the variety. Elementals love music and dancing, and if you're an elemental, get up and groove. That's what it says. You might be a wise one. So this is kind of the witch or the wizard or the mystic, the sage, the old sage, the very old soul that comes back into earth to help and be an incarnated angel that way, almost like a Gandalf or like a Galadriel character. You can affect the weather. You're highly opinionated in a helpful way. Are fascinated with the ancient esoteric cultures of Egypt, Greece, Atlantis, or Mayan. Enjoy or have studied shamanism, astrology, Wicca, alchemy, Kabbalistic healing, or other ancient systems of healing and information. Are good at manifesting intuition and healing. Have an aversion to the times of Inquisition and witch burning. And have an affinity for the elemental world. Are solemn and serious, or more intense types. Are highly sensitive to moon phases. And, you know, for me, I actually fit in a lot of these categories, but I also have a lot of this too. And I would say that that's kind of where the high L's are. Now, you might be a star person, she's saying, if you feel like no one notices or acknowledges you for good deeds. Have visions of spaceships hovering above you. Are eager to assist others, but are a bit detached or cool to others. Love technology, prefer an intuitive sense of spirituality over a religious form, have a fascination with certain star systems such as Pleiades, Andromeda, or Sirius, and many others she did not mention. Are sensitive to crowds, people, and places, love symbols, codes, runes, and sacred geometry, are task-oriented over relationship-oriented, are extra sensitive to and abhor violence, or living near water is a must. So you can also fit all these into me, and probably you are seeing that too, that these categories start to intertwine with each other. And of course, there's always varieties that make us all unique. You might be a hybrid if you may feel like you resonated to more than one of these realms of earth angels. If so, you may be a combination of two or more, and below are some more common combinations and their characteristics. So mystic angels are combinations of wise ones and angels, loving, helpful, caring, and streetwise instead of overly trusting. They still appreciate rules, but because they value order and organization, they are healers and know-it-alls with a better sense of giving and receiving. Knight Paladin are a half wise one, half angel, but the wise one part is a knight. Those who fight for just causes and defend the weaker. They are truthful, orderly, and can keep secret. Mystic stars, blends of star people and wise ones, natural-born teachers who bring universal knowledge to Earth. Their teachings have global purposes of inspiring world peace. Leprechauns, half wise ones and half incarnated elementals. They have the wisdom that comes from living on the earth for many lifetimes, down-to-earth practical approach to living, wicked sense of humor, and a deep sense of connection to nature. I would say that with leprechauns, we can have the high elves, and we could also have the different types of Maya that Tolkien wrote about, and the different types of elementals like Tom Bombadil, you know, those types of nature spirits that also have that wise one type of, I guess, that leaning in terms of helping others and coming to Earth to assist. Mer people, half incarnated angel and half incarnated elemental. These people often have long curly red or red tinted hair. Boy, okay, so you're an elf if you have red hair, and you're also a mermaid if you have red hair. Have to live near the ocean, are passionate about birds, whales, dolphins. They're often thirsty and need to drink water constantly. So here's my thoughts. I'm going to stop sharing that here. Here's my thoughts on that. I think that a lot of that is very true. And there's a special reason why a lot of that rings very true to us. We have archetypes in order to communicate to each other, to understand each other better. And it is the role of the mystic, the seers, the psychics, the ones that are in tune with the energetic world, to read those patterns that create the archetypes in order to have people understand that that inner connection between one another. And Doreen Virtue was that person. She decided to take on that role and only decided to change in 2017. So it caused a little bit of a different direction for her life, but that is her quiz, and she has written many books, but I'm not sure if a lot of them are even available because, you know, she's done such a thorough job of trying to get rid of her past in a way, saying that a lot of it is evil and that you'll go to hell. I mean, you could read her blogs, but she really went to the other opposite extreme. And what I'm interested in doing is showing how everything has a version of truth to it. And because of the oneness factor in this world, and what many people are spiritually awakening to, you know, we are all one, that quantum entanglement that physicists are proving will show that her archetypes ring true to so many people, because it's important for us to have those types of psychics and those energy readers like Doreen volunteered to be at that time, and you know what spiritual teachers do. It's important to have those types of people be able to read those archetypes, because that can help others within the collective understand themselves more. We're all on the quest to know the self, and what we will find is that the prime source, you know, everything that we come from is varied and is so unique in so many perspectives. So we all represent that. We all represent a very unique part of the prime source, and we all contain different frequencies and vibrations and waves within us, within our very atoms and molecules that actually create who we are. And so Doreen was able to tap into that. Although I would say that it's unfinished, because I don't think that she gave a very thorough or detailed idea about it, but she gave us very simple ideas that you can observe in certain people, and you can observe in certain, you know, mystical and the mythical creatures of the different stories. So I think that she was very good in doing that. Do I think that she has all the answers? No, because I think that the answers are all contained within each of us, and we all have a version and a piece of truth to add to the whole picture. So, you know, her focus more on hair color and weight and things like that. I mean, there can be some reasons behind it, and there can also be, there's always exceptions to rules. And the universe is a really strange place that we try to see the divine order in things, and we try to get a grasp of kind of the rules and the laws. And then we learn, well, there's exceptions. And I think that that's just a symbol for life being so varied, and for none of us to have all the answers. And I think that that is actually what makes the universe a really beautiful place, is that there's always room to grow. There's never set laws and things like that in terms of there's no exceptions to rules. If there were no exceptions to rules, well, then everything would be a very boring universe in a way. So there's always exceptions, because that really symbolizes the expansion of consciousness and being able to grow and learn and evolve with new things that it acquires, that we acquire together. So to go into this a little bit more and tell you, you know, where I am going with this, with the quantum entanglement, and why her quiz made so much sense to people, and regardless of what she has chosen now for her life, we can take that as a little bit of a help, a mirror for many of us, and understand where it came from. And we'll get more into the idea of how sometimes a materialism version of religion can close us off to the energetic spiritual world. But I'll get into that. So the microscopic world of all things is really what this is about. And a feature of the microscopic world is prescribed by quantum theory, which is the idea of non-locality. And I did a video on non-locality that I can put in the link for you to learn a little bit more. But Albert Einstein called this the spooky actions from a distance, which is a great phrase. It was first described by Einstein, Boris Podolsky, and Nathan Rosen in 1935, and it's referred to the EPR, which is the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox. Now, non-locality actually has been proven. So the idea of science and these quantum physics theories about non-locality, it is something that it's not able to really be refuted at this time, and that it has been demonstrated many, many times, but scientists are having a hard time understanding why does it work. And I think that that's really the role of more the mystics and the psychics, because they can make sense of what scientists discover. They can make sense of it spiritually and bring that together. Non-locality describes the ability of objects to instantaneously know about each other's states of being, even when separated by large distances. Almost as if the universe at large instantaneously arranges its particles in anticipation of future events. So what this means is that when Doreen put in her heart or in her intentions that she wanted to help people understand their souls more and understand, more about what makes them unique, she was able to communicate information from across the distance, across the world. You don't have to be close to her, but you simply have to get her information. And it is proven by quantum physics that it relates to everyone, that everything is shared in that way. And that when Doreen set an intention to put that type of quiz out into the world, it started to form the reality of bringing people together and understanding themselves more at a higher level in terms of adding that extra dimension to their human personality. Being an incarnated angel is nothing to feel like is a sin or a bad thing. In fact, it adds this extra part of being human, and it increases your ability for a more a higher type of experience in life, and to do things that require you to make decisions that are about helping the collective and helping others and not just your own life. And so that's what the incarnated angel represents, is the soul that decides to be a volunteer for the collective and help others, and also help themselves. But it is really about putting that priority into your life and finding ways to help others. So because of this instantaneous action or transfer of information, this is where non-locality appears to actually be possible. And non-locality occurs due to the phenomena of quantum entanglement, whereby particles that interact with each other become permanently correlated or dependent on each other's states and properties to the extent that they effectively lose their individuality and in many ways behave as a single entity. So this is what explains the problems with empaths, or those that open up that empathic ability. There's a balance that's needed in the idea that you can almost merge your molecules basically with others in a way. I mean, you really take down those borders and those walls between other people, that you can almost feel other people's energies so much that it can affect you. So there has to come a time in the empath's life where they can make that decision, that active decision, to kind of put their own walls up when they need and then take them down. And it's about making that decision to, put your feelers out there and, experience the world as a single entity, really. And that's kind of what happens is when someone awakens spiritually, they start to experience the world as a single entity, a single growing organism of all sorts of different parts that are evolving together. And that is what can start to happen to an empath. And I absolutely believe that every single human has that ability within themselves to do. And it's just about kind of opening that doorway within yourself and deciding also if you want to assist humanity in that way. Because when you put your feelers out there into the world to help others, you gain that ability to feel the energy of others so that you can be more of a help to others. The idea of non-locality and quantum entanglement has been demonstrated many times in lab experiments and regarded as proven. It's proven. It doesn't matter if you have a world religion that is against science. It doesn't matter. It has been proven in this world. And those that are more knowledgeable about quantum physics and the sciences, they understand what they have observed and what they have learned by seeing these experiments take place. One of them, or a few of them, was actually created by a famous physicist, John Bell, who devised test models in the 1960s, and today scientists can perform them using photons of light. Physicists can measure properties of particles of light, such as their spin, their momentum, or polarization from each other. These experiments have shown that when particles are entangled, the outcome of these measurements are more statistically correlated than would be expected in a classical system of theory of locality. So as Andrew Friedman, an astrophysicist at University of California who worked on the quasar experiment, also known as the cosmic Bell test, he said this: quantum entanglement itself has been verified over many decades. The real challenge is that even though we know it's an experimental reality, we don't have a compelling story of how it actually works. So they're not understanding how quantum entanglement works. And this is where the mystic can come in, the psychic can come in, understanding why it works, or at least bridging the connection between the spiritual reasons and purposes behind the quantum world, and showing, well, why are all our molecules shared? Why are we actually affected by one another? Why is it that Doreen created this quiz that opened up the minds of so many people on Earth? And that interconnection between one another is what we share in this world, in this physical reality. And that's quantum entanglement. And that's why everything that you do affects another, and vice versa. And this is something that we all will wake up to the more that science becomes more available to everyone to understand, and the more even science gets to the point where we can even do more of these experiments to prove this existence. And I would say, as a mystic myself, the reason why scientists may not understand yet why this actually works, but why it is proven to work, is that you have to get into the spiritual realm of the mind of God, prime source, Eru, Iluvatar, for those that are following Tolkien's spirituality. It is the idea that we share a quantum field of consciousness together at some place. In some way, we're all very separate, and we all do our own things, and we have our own lives, and we have our own opinions, and we have our own thoughts. but there is a common denominator that we all share. There's a quantum field of consciousness that exists within our mind and beyond the physical world that we actually can communicate on and connect to. And that's where we get into telepathy and reading each other's thoughts and being able to share each other's experiences through that way. That is the space where that happens. And the quantum entanglement is about proving that space exists, that prime source, that field of consciousness where we all meet eventually exists. And that's something that maybe scientists will not be able to prove at this time, but I do believe eventually they will. I believe that all things have to return back to the source at some point. And so that is what I do feel, is that Doreen Virtue was a helper in this, a helper in having people understand more a sense of themselves, reading the archetypes that exist vibrationally within this prime source, this dream space to dark crystal, the dark crystal, the Gelflings say dream space, but with us, it's this quantum field of consciousness that we can all connect to each other on. And this is where Doreen Virtue was able to tap into. It has a name. It could be called Akashic Records, or the Akashic, the Akashic Records, which is the sky records. And that is something that has been taught a long time ago in the Vedic text to, the Hindus of Hinduism. And the Akashic Records is where the archetypes that have been written before space-time, or we have created as we have gone along even, have been collected. And then a psychic is able to tap into those Akashic Records, pull down those archetypes that were created, and bring them forward for people to see. And what this does is it actually, when you share those archetypes, and when people when more than one person starts to resonate with an archetype, then they're actually given a mirror about unification and unity. Because proving the idea that an archetype exists to show how one soul and another soul can actually relate and resonate with each other is when we start to prove the unified theory of everything. And so this is where Doreen Virtue was able to tap into, was the Akashic Records. And as an astral empath, I understand what she's doing. She's putting herself as an assistant worker for the collective, for other souls to understand themselves, reaching into that place of those energies that have been created and bringing them down for others to see and to have a mirror. And Doreen Virtue tapped into these collective energies, as incomplete as they are, in the idea that they're more of a generalization, which is good because it helps us get some of the easier terms out there and we can go deeper into them. But they vaguely do connect to everyone on different levels of their experience. In some way, somebody can really connect to what she is saying. We are all expressions of self from prime source. And therefore, in order to communicate this non-locality in a way with one another, we share similar thoughts and ideas about things known as the archetypes. And Carl Jung was very good about grabbing those archetypes from the Akashic Records and bringing it forward into the collective and showing the world, like, here you go, here's the archetypes. And I have a bunch of videos on the archetypes if you want to learn about them. The Carl Jung archetypes are seen within the Lord of the Rings. Archetypes are seen everywhere in this world for us to understand ourselves a little bit better, so that we're not all just this kind of this blob that has no identity, but that we form and create our identity as we go along. And what I actually believe is that we have formed and created our identity way before we have come to Earth. And we just go through the process of awakening to our identity, to our special, unique vibration and essence. And that's when things are familiar and resonate with us. They are our own personal, special vibration and essence that we are focusing on bringing to life, bringing to creation in this lifetime. So these archetypes are created by the collective to form the ability to communicate and know one another as reflections of the self, of the prime source. And Doreen tapped into these archetypes in order to be a service to the world at one point in showing a mirror to others. I do believe that. So I said whether she wants to admit or own that today is her choice. But it makes you question, what does it mean to spiritually help others? Now, this is where we're going to get a little bit deeper into the idea of material religion versus spiritual religion or spirituality in just general terms. Is it to tell everyone that there is only one religion and separate things between one another in the idea of what Doreen then does by saying, don't do this of the new age, this is evil and will send you to hell? When you separate things that way, when you put borders on things and say, if you do this, you go to heaven. If you do this, you go to hell. When you build those types of borders, and is this following more in Einstein's first theory of locality, in the idea where an object must be present in location to affect each other, or as we have proof now, as non-locality? Einstein was incorrect with his first theory. His first theory was locality, or localism is what it was called. And Einstein was so upset after they have proven the idea through mathematical theories and equations and creating that the EPR paper, the idea of non-locality. He was upset in the idea that he wanted to be right in the idea that things had to be present next to each other in order to affect each other. It seemed logical to him. But then he realized that things do not have to be close to each other and I'm talking large distances across the galaxy, across the universe, to affect each other. And they have proven that through telescopes and looking out into space. And you can learn all about non-locality. It is very interesting. But the idea is the locality and the non-locality of people and souls is spiritually helping others more about giving collective roadmaps and assisting souls that allow people to learn and see what their unique vibrations are, or helping them to create their own essence if they're feeling lost? Is that truly helping them spiritually more so than telling them what God to believe in and what to do in life? And I think that these are the deeper questions that religion must ask. Sometimes religion can be formed without thinking about the quantum world, not thinking about the energetic world that has been proven by physicists to actually say that all things connect to each other and there really is no borders between each other. What determines the difference between heaven and hell in terms of spirituality is your experiences. So I will go into that on another video, but Doreen talks a little bit about that on her article. And what she said is that some of these things, like believing in her angel oracle cards or reading the books that she wrote, can bring you onto a path of hell. And this was something that was really sad for me to hear, and many other people that have known about her for some time. And without saying that she's wrong, I'll say this. The quantum world that actually can be identified today and proven as having demonstrated non-locality and quantum entanglement, that microscopic world does not align to those thoughts of separating things into categories and saying this will go to heaven or hell. And I would say that a lot of people get that wrong about New Age and the idea they think that the New Age is about saying that there is no heaven and hell. No, the New Age is about saying we have a microscopic world of energy, and it is connected to our thoughts, and it is about constructing the reality around us, and that heaven and hell exists as a place, a physical field of reality that is created with thoughts. Whether you want to believe that it's in the afterlife or in this life, it's a mirror and a consequence to thoughts and feelings that create that experience, that reality. It's not so much about saying that there is no heaven and hell. It's about saying that the microscopic world is about bringing forth the idea that the matter that we construct in front of us is related to waves, frequencies, and vibrations. So just as humans are, we see this in nature. The quantum entanglement idea is actually observed in nature. And this is where I believe that nature has all the keys to our evolution, to our self-discovery, because when we observe nature, nature demonstrates quantum entanglement, demonstrates non-locality and all of that in a very simple, beautiful way. And it's really about observing the idea that everything in an ecosystem is dependent on each other, and that one organism, such as, our pollinators, bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, many different types of insects and animals that actually help to pollinate the flowers, if they all died, if they just did not exist anymore, then we would all die because all of our plants would die. They would not get pollinated, and our animals would die who eat the plants. So then that's what would cause the humans to die. The plants and the animals, we would have no food source. This is why there's a concern about bees. And this is where we start to see that everything is connected, is when we look at the world of nature and we observe its behaviors. This is how we start to prove the idea of quantum entanglement in the physical world, whereas it's more in the energetic world and it's hard to see with a naked eye. But in nature, we can see it with a naked eye very clearly. And when we look at each other in the human world, we can see how we are dependent on each other as well, and how, we have our sense of freedom, but we also very much rely on one another to help each other out, to help each other get reminders of ourselves. And Doreen Virtue was a reminder. And I'll say this, everything at a microscopic level is connected. And though you can't see it with the naked eye, without these photon light experiments that physicists have proven over time and time again, you can still feel it with your heart. And I absolutely do believe that. And so I do think that Doreen has put these borders and barriers between herself and her old work, but I will read something from one of her books that I did buy in the past, which is called Assertiveness for Earth Angels. And this was a great book to help, just you feeling like you could put yourself out there in the world. And I'll read this last part here where she has a prayer. And this is her New Age book on Earth Angels that she has now completely renounced, but this is what she said. Here's a wonderful prayer for dealing with narcissists and for being an assertive Earth Angel activist on Earth. Dear God, Thank you for guiding me to be a strong, confident, and open-hearted person. Thank you for helping me find healthy ways to deal with my emotions. Thank you for guiding me to honor my body, and thank you for sending me open-hearted, trustworthy, and nice friends. Thank you for opening my eyes to the truth, and thank you for watching over and protecting us all. Amen. I would say that the idea of that energy that is protective and loving is not mutually exclusive with what we think about elemental souls and what we think about, wise ones, because all of those souls originated from that prime source that she's talking about, that many people call God. And that is something that I think is where there's a bridge there between religion and the spiritual world in terms of the energetic world, the microscopic world. And this is something that I believe that, she decided to say, well, no, I can't have one or the other. But I guess when you have your spiritual awakening and really see the deeper connections to all things, you don't build those borders and those walls up in your mind. And it's not about being a rebellious person to what you want to call the creator, God. It's about owning your right to be an assistance on earth as a more self-actualized soul, one that understands itself more, understands its self-identity, and can be more of a greater service when you go through that self-awakening. And I think that there is nothing wrong in doing that, in bringing forth the understanding of your soul more, so that you can be a greater help to others. And that in turn helps the collective. And I believe that is really what we are here to do for the prime source that people call God. Not to sit there and judge one another, whether we believe in something that brings us forwards to that source, but what are we doing to work together? And how are we being reflections of that goodness and of that love that we feel is protecting us at all times? How can we be reflections of that on earth for others? And therefore creating our reality that is far more harmonious with others and far more peaceful and joyful. And that is truly what I believe. So I hope that you enjoyed this and learned some things about how the quantum world can prove the connections between one another and why the incarnated angel quiz actually works, and why do, even though it's not completely complete, why are there archetypes that many of us can resonate with, and not all of us are going to feel like we resonate with every type of soul type, but we each combine different aspects of the prime source, and we are all different vibrations of different parts of the prime source reflected in the physical to experience a physical life. And I believe that when we honor each other, through the idea of namaste, seeing the divine light within, we are honoring each other as parts of that consciousness of the prime source, and seeing and recognizing that within each other, that we all contain that. And the archetypes that she helped kind of develop, and what's also being developed in this world, the archetypes of star seeds, in terms of what star system you're from, that's that's actually what I believe is happening now, is that we're having starseed archetypes being created. So we're getting even more detailed. It's like the fractal idea. Everything gets a little bit more deeper and deeper, but it all comes from the same picture, just many different parts to represent it. So I hope that this was something to think about deeper and understand where Doreen went. And it's not to say that she was wrong, she was right. It's not to say anything about her life choice. It's really just what she wanted to experience next. But like all energy, nothing is destroyed. You can't destroy the energy that you put out into the world. You can only see it transform and turn into something else. So, Hen and Lei for watching, and I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I'll see you on the next video.